Hi guys, and welcome to my album review of Boneshaker by Airbourne. Firstly, as a disclaimer, I do just want to say, and you'll know this if you've been following my channel, I'm not overly impressed with the album. That's mainly due to the production of it sounding quite raw, but that whole rant that I've got, I'll try and leave towards the end, and when I go through the kind of tracks, track by track, I'll try and be as positive as I can. Because I do think it's a good album, but obviously all of Airbourne's previous albums have been absolutely brilliant, and I'm a massive fan of every single one of them. So I am going to be very critical with this one. I usually do as well. I usually do play a preview of each track before I talk about it, but my album remaster video that I did, the full video, that got blocked instantly. I think just basically because there's too much copyright in it and too many copyrighted songs, so I'm not going to include any of the songs in this video, and it will just be my lovely voice that you'll get to hear. So firstly, the title track, Boneshaker. So this is a good strong song overall. It's got a really great chorus. However, to be the lead single and to be the title track and the opening track, I was expecting a little more aside from the chorus. I think just the way it starts off for the opening track, I think it kind of like lacks the hype and excitement that you would usually get. I was expecting some more guitar in the intro, which I did actually include in my alternate mix, if you've heard that. Or some vocals from Joel, just something like, you know, yeah, come on, just something like that to kind of like kick into the song and give it more hype and energy. Overall though, aside from that, it was great and I really liked it. Track number 2, Burn Out the Nitro. This is another strong song, up-tempo, great for headbanging. My criticism with this one though is that it's far too short, considering that on this album they were talking about how they were trying to replicate the live sound, but yet the live version of the song is 1.5 minutes longer than the version that we get on the album. So as some of you might have seen, I did extend this and I tried to make it a bit more like the live version, and I've got to say that the outro on the one that I did without sounding cocky sounds a lot better. So if they just kind of, you know, played around with this a bit more, extended it a bit, it would have been a top track, but overall it is a good track. Track number 3, This Is Our City. This might actually be my favourite song on the album. I love all of Airbourne's kind of slightly slower, aggressive, but powerful songs that kind of really give you a kick. And this is another one of those types of songs like Rivalry, Back in the Game, that sort of thing. The best part of this song for me though is the bridge section after the solo. The riff that comes in just absolutely screams Angus Young and Parage. Parage obviously being one of the albums that they've tried to replicate here. With that kind of late 70s Albert studio sound. I just get so many classic vibes off that little riff there, and it's probably the only place on this album that's actually capable of giving us a bit of a shiver down my spine. So yeah, This Is Our City is a really strong track. Moving on to Sex to Go, which unfortunately, I think this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but unfortunately I just can't get my head around this track. It's probably, in my opinion, the weakest track on the album. And the reason why is because it just sounds like a bit of a B-side. Something that I kind of would have expected to hear on like the special edition of No Guts, No Glory. Or with like Money and Heavyweight Lover on Diamond Cuts. I think the riff to it is quite catchy and quite groovy. But honestly, I think that's probably the only praise I can give it at the minute. I'm just not quite getting it. I think this might have been one of the songs which was kind of done in 1 or 2 takes because the production of it didn't sound great, but yeah. Backseat Boogie, track number 5. This is another good track with a great chorus. Again though, the initial riff to it kind of sounds like it could have been a B-side, and I'm pretty sure this was one of the songs that was written very quickly in the studio and it kind of only took 1 or 2 takes to actually do, and that could be one of the reasons. But like I say, it does pick up, and it's got a great chorus, and overall it is a good song. I don't think it was strong enough to be a single, but it's a good track. The next track, Blood on the Water. This is a much stronger track in my opinion, with a lot of power to it, reminiscent to Black Dog Barking. And I think that the kind of topic that it covers lyrically is actually quite good and a bit more unique, rather than just a song about kind of women and sex and rock and roll. If anyone hasn't worked it out yet, it's a song about a shark inspired by Jaws, but I'm pretty sure that is pretty obvious unless English isn't your first language. The downside of this track is the length of it. It's kind of over really quickly, but they have obviously trimmed all the fat right off of it, which is quite often a good thing. Track number 7, She Gives Me Hell. This is another good track. Joel's vocals sound good on this one. A little bit more produced, I'd say, as opposed to on some of the other tracks. I did feel like this one was a bit short though, so I did extend the outro in the alternate remix that I did. So that is one of my criticisms, as well as the fact that the riff is a little basic and there's nothing really unique about the song. Obviously, probably not strong enough to be a single, but it's a good song, and you do always need a track like this on the album, especially with a genre that has such a high amount of male listeners. You always kind of find one of these sorts of tracks on each album, like Never Been Rocked Like This and stuff like that. Track number 8, Switchblade Angel. This track starts off really strong, it's really powerful, but it's just over too quick and too soon. I think after the first listen, I actually genuinely thought it only had one verse until I went back and listened to it again and I realised that it does actually have a second verse. It's a good track, but it's nothing out of this world. It gets stuck in your head, it is quite catchy, but I think this was actually supposedly a throwaway from Running Wild, so it's nothing absolutely, out of this world, and I don't think it was ever destined to be. Track number 9, Weapon of War. Thank fuck. A track which actually breaks the 4-minute mark. So firstly, I do like the length of this song. It's the only one for me on the album where they've actually allowed themselves to delve a bit more into depth with everything. There's a lot going on, there's a few different riffs, changes in tempo, lots of guitar work, and the topic as well, which is obviously very in-depth about veterans and soldiers who are kind of just used by the army and then left and abandoned, sort of scarred for life. The song starts out strong, but I feel like it could have been a bit better. I feel like it could have led somewhere else. I think the faster riff that kind of kicks in is a little bit basic and repetitive and not quite catchy or unique enough. It reminds me a lot actually of Kick's Blow My Fuse. The tone of the guitar really sounds like it could have been on or off that album. Either She Dropped Me the Bomb or Blow My Fuse. So yeah, overall it's a good track, but I was expecting, when I saw it originally, I saw the length of it, I noted it as possibly being the best song on the album, so I think I had quite a lot of high hopes for it, and it wasn't quite as good as what I was expecting. I really just kind of wanted a song on this album like Live It Up, something that kind of builds up and has that high-pitched Angus Young guitar sound, like the finger picking, on Live It Up, and Shoot the Thrill as well. Either, a massive build-up intro or a bridge that builds up and then explodes on Shoot the Thrill towards the end of that song. Live It Up and Shoot the Thrill are my favourite songs of all time, so I'm really, really craving a new song that's like them. And I thought this might have been it, but it wasn't. Overall, it is a good track, but I think I had too much high expectations for this one. Rock and Roll for Life, the final track on the album. I was hoping that this one was going to be good because I've actually got this t-shirt that I'm wearing is a Rock and Roll for Life one, which was released in 2017, I think. Obviously before we knew about the tracks on this album, so when I saw the tracks on the album, I was like, that's on my t-shirt, I really want that to be a good track. And it does start out really strong. I love the powerful guitar riff and that little bit of vocal from Joe, oh yeah. And then it gets into the first verse and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. Joel's singing is a bit odd and I don't know if it works or not. It has a strong chorus, again with that powerful Let There Be Rock inspired riff. Obviously this whole song is inspired by Let There Be Rock. But as with a lot of songs on this album, it's just over too quick. And if it really was meant to be a Let There Be Rock inspired track, as well as the whole album with it being inspired by Power Age, it just needed to be a lot longer. I mean, Rock and Roll for Life doesn't even have a solo. Let There Be Rock has, what, 3 solos? I mean, come on. As I said, I'm really craving a longer song with like a solo and bridge section which just builds up and explodes into this mesmerising final chorus with a fuck ton of anthemic background vocals and guitars. And do you know what song does have that? Ready to Rock from Black Dog Barking. And I think the fact that they make reference to this almost like a reprise in the closing moments of the album kind of just sums this whole thing up in a nutshell. Black Dog Barking is it's just a fucking legendary album. And the fact that they've made reference back to Ready to Rock obviously makes it clear to us that they know it's a good track. And I would have just loved to have heard more stuff like that and had some longer tracks. Yeah, and I personally just don't think that this album does compare to it or Breaking Out of Hell or No Guts, No Glory. I know this is an unpopular opinion as well, but I'm not a massive fan of Running Wild because I feel like Airbourne was still trying to sort of finding their feet with that album. So I would say that this album probably is better than Running Wild, but like Black Dog Barking's probably there, No Guts is there, Breaking Out of Hell's there, and then you've got like this and Running Wild. But it's just a bit disappointing to see that they've got up that high and they've perfected their style and their sound so much, and then this album kind of feels like it's dropped. So yeah, I've just been a little bit let down with this one. And that's mainly due, with it, being quite short overall. But I think the main one is due to the production and studio process. Not only do all the mixes sound quite shit, hence why I've remastered every song trying to make it sound more normal. But the recording process was rushed. And all you need to do to prove my point is just watch an interview with the guys talking about the new album, and it just makes absolute sense. And I'll quote Ryan here, it all happened really fast. And I think you can tell that, not just by the length of the songs and the length of the overall album, but the quality of the songs and kind of the performance of them and how everyone sounds. A lot of the songs were done in one take, and Joel and Harry actually talked about going to see Dave Cobb after a take saying, yeah, we know we could have done better. And Dave Cobb just turned around and sort of said, no, that was brilliant, that's magic, it'll work. And some of the songs were actually written there and then in the studio. In one interview, Joel and Harry couldn't actually even remember how it plays Sex to Go, which was one of the songs that I noted as being weaker, personally. And that probably could be one of the reasons why. It might have actually been one of the ones which was just written and recorded there and then. And the most worrying part about all of this is Joel actually praised the process and said that I wouldn't be shocked if more albums start getting made like this. And all I can say to that is I pray to God that they don't, and that Airbourne actually kind of wake up and realise that they just weren't hitting their potential on this album. Overall, the album is good, don't get me wrong, and there's potential there, but I don't think it was executed properly. And it just doesn't compare the level of quality that we got with like Black Dog Barking and Breaking Out of Hell. And when you wait in 3 years for a new Airbourne album, you want that quality. You don't want it to sound like it was straight out of the 70s when bands were bringing out a new album every year. And I think that about sums up my rant. I absolutely love Airbourne, so I do think I have an excuse to be critical. And I just hate to see... I'd hate this to be the start of them going downhill, because obviously AC/DC have made some really weak albums, a lot weaker than this. Overall, as a rock album, I would give Boneshaker quite a sort of high score. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10, which sounds really good. And it's a good album, but like I say, it's just nowhere, it's nowhere near what I would usually expect to rate an Airbourne album, because usually they're pretty flawless. So yeah, to sum up, standout tracks for me are Boneshaker, Burn Out the Night Row, This Is Our City, and Blood in the Water. It's a good album, but not quite reaching their potential.